Hi everybody, and welcome back to Organ Explorer. I am your host, Owen Sammons, and today my guests are Ted Gentry, who is the organist here at Maxwell Street Presbyterian Church, and Clif Cason, who is a former organist here at Maxwell Street Presbyterian Church. So as usual, grab your favorite beverage, pull up a comfy chair, and get ready for this episode of Organ Explorer. Maxwell Street Presbyterian Church is located on the corner of Maxwell Street and Lexington Avenue in downtown Lexington. Maxwell Street Presbyterian is practically on the campus of the University of Kentucky, and its early history is rooted in ministering to the university community. As time has gone on, their focus has shifted to include advocacy for social justice and embracing the downtown Lexington community as well. Maxwell Street Presbyterian is also endowed with a marvelous tracker organ by the Austrian organ builder Rieger Orgelbau. This organ is kind of a big deal. The organ reform movement at the time had legs, big muscly legs in the United States, and this instrument is imported and embodies the height of reform of the symphonic organ that E.M. Skinner had made ubiquitous. Some would argue this organ waved that flag of reform until the edges were a little frazzled. I'm joined by Ted Gentry, music director at Maxwell Street, to talk about the music ministry here. Then later, former organist Clif Cason gives us a history of this unique instrument. I'm here at the console with Ted. So Ted, tell me, how long have you been here at Maxwell Street?
It'll be 5 years in September.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the organ and the role it plays here at Maxwell Street and what you like about it and everything.
This is a tracker organ. It's probably the first important tracker in the Baroque revival period and was installed in 1963 by the Rieger Organ Company. Because it was so new at that time, there are a number of drawbacks to it, but there are also a lot of wonderful things about it. And it's a fantastic sounding instrument with a lot of incredible beauty to it. Probably the biggest drawback as a church organist is that there is no combination action, so there are no pistons.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you get used to that, and I have gotten accustomed to it, and usually it works very, very well. If I'm doing something that's big and romantic, such as the Vidor Toccata, I usually have to have a stop puller on each side standing, and I color code all of my directions so they know whether to push or to pull.
And then you pray.
Yes, absolutely. And it actually has worked out really, really well.
Good.
I have a wonderful pianist in the church who loves pulling stops.
Oh, that's good.
So whenever I need it, I ask her to do so. But that's really the only major drawback. And also the fact that there's no swell. So all of the dynamics are terrace dynamics. And so you have to pull and push to achieve that. But again, you get used to that, and it actually works quite well.
Oh, neat. So you said that this is a mechanical action organ. We've been looking at a few of those. We just went to Berea and saw 2 of their mechanical action organs. And so tell me, how does that bear on your playing? Specifically, does that make it easier, harder? Does it put you more in touch with the instrument? How do you feel about the action of this instrument?
When I first started 5 years ago, it was very, very difficult. I felt like I was working out every time I played the instrument.
Okay.
And my arms were really, really tired. My hands were tired because I was accustomed to an electro-pneumatic instrument prior to this one. But now I don't even think about it.
Good.
It's not an issue at all. And in fact, when I go to more conventional electro-pneumatic instrument, that's quite an adjustment for me because I'm so accustomed to a much stiffer action.
when I went to UK, this is a hopping spot. I can attest. I parked nearby Maxwell Street many times. So you must have a pretty hopping music program here.
Yes, we have 2 bell choirs, and we have a wonderful chancel choir, which consists of adults. We also have 4 or 5 UK students who sing with the choir, and they actually, the choir disbands for the summer, and those students continue singing throughout the summer months.
Oh, that's nice.
And we also have a really fine children's choir, which I do not direct. I do the chancel choir and the bell choirs.
Fantastic.
Well, great. Yeah, you have a lot of activity over here at Maxwell Street. All right, I'm here at the console with Clif. Clif, tell me a little bit about this organ that you oversaw for quite a long time.
Originally, there was a pipe organ here, and in the 60s, I believe, in that time frame, actually it must have been the 50s, a lot of churches had to make a decision about whether to upgrade the pipe organ and get it back to playing condition or to go electronic. So in that time frame, again, probably the 50s, they got a Baldwin organ. At the time, it was a split chancel, and as was the case with a lot of electronic organs, it developed problems and they had to make a decision. Are they going to buy another electronic organ, or are they going back to pipe? There were some movers and some shakers. who had the vision of redoing the chancel area. The architect, who was a member of the church, Norman Chrisman, put together this case, which is in the form of a descending dove. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it's in a lighter color wood as opposed to other parts of the church that are dark wood. The main sponsors of the organ went to Austria, went to the Rieger shop in Austria, and talked with the Glorgotz, I think was his name. The Rieger had come into the United States primarily through Robert Nuren at the University of Michigan, and there were starting to be these different hotspots for Riegers. Okay. And so they signed the contract in the 60s, early 60s. Actually, when it was finished, it sat in port for a while because it couldn't be brought in yet. The chancel wasn't completed. Also, Rieger was putting in a big Rieger organ in Brimoire, Pennsylvania, which has its own story. Then through the years, and not really too long after it arrived, people started complaining about it. In the contract, it says very clearly that the church would not put any carpeting down. That was not honored. The church put carpeting down primarily because the reeds at that time were very, very raspy. And this was going back to the interpretation of what Baroque organs sounded like. This is in the 60s, so everybody's thinking totally different than what we have now.
Well, and also a departure from what was popular before that as well.
Oh, exactly. Can you imagine going from a Baldwin electronic to this sound?
Wow.
Yeah. So you see why there was a great controversy.
Sure.
And I just mentioned a few minutes ago to you guys, they actually wanted to put a roux positive inside the pulpit behind the organist here. So that didn't go. They could have gotten it, it was a real cheap deal. 50 years later, I was with Norman Chrisman. I had written an article for the newsletter. I said, we're starting to see a lot of problems with the organ. And he was sitting here. He was very interested in it because he was the architect of the casing and very involved with raising the money. And lo and behold, I was just sitting here and a note on the pedal just started playing. And it was like, okay, this is it. This is the act from God. We are going to go, we're going to get something, we're going to change some things. So we refurbished the instrument, which about every 50 years for a tracker instrument is not uncommon.
Right.
John-Paul Buzard was given the contract. He took out all the reeds, added some very, very beautiful stops, and then he had to do a lot of work in the tracker action. There were things back there like paper clips that were holding things together.
Oh, I've seen it.
There were cotton swabs in certain pipes that they didn't want those to be sounding. Jean-Paul comes in, does this incredible job. He took out the chiff in the flute, which was somewhat controversial. But it's now a very clean sound.
I like that. I liked using it. It was nice. It goes well with the string, or with the Gemshorn rather.
Yeah. Then a few years after that, we contracted Walker Technologies, Bob Walker, to put in some digital stops. That also was controversial.
Sure.
But I told Bob, I said, I don't want a hybrid. I don't want part French, part German. I want this to be a complement to the pipes, and I want to give it more gravitas, which was a word that Bach used. And so we did that, I think overall, we added some really cool things like the Zimbelstern, which Bob Walker was so proud of, and the Glockenspiel. It's a little corny, but it's not uncommon. They had those in the German organs. And then I was mentioning earlier also the idea of a celeste sound on a Baroque instrument I just never heard of it before. But John-Paul Buzard said, yes. The Schwebung. The Schwebung is a stop that you find on some German instruments.
And it's tight. It's not not excessively, the beats aren't excessive, but it's a tight celeste, but it's nice. It's really nice.
Yeah. We at the same time as digital and the refurbishing, we added on a separate 16-foot Posauna that has its own wind chests and its own blowers and all the fixings going to the 16-foot. Mm-hmm. And it is a great sound. To have a bear fight for here, a 16-foot, it sounded like a duck was being squeezed. Totally useless unless you were in a continuo. It would have been beautiful, like a little continuo.
Okay.
But yeah, it didn't. It just. I'd pull it out, and people would complain. And yeah, you have every right to. It's not a good stop sound, but anyway.
Is there anything else on here that you particularly find successful? Anything in the digital stuff that you really like? I love how it's laid out.
Yeah,
it's so clear cut.
That was added on as kind of one of a Bob Walker light bulb going off.
Yeah.
And he had a technician, a woodwork specialist that came in and made this happen. And originally we were going to add, 4 or 5 things only.
Right.
But then when I saw the possibilities, like Bob said, I was in a candy store, and so I just started adding more things. Whatever was missing on the pipe side, I tried to fill in on the digital side. So we have things that complement. And again, that was the whole idea. I didn't want to have a hybrid. I wanted this to be digitals added to the German Baroque sound.
Yeah. And to my ear, quite successfully.
I think so.
I'm really impressed with it.
I loved playing it. I was here for 27 years. I didn't play for all 27 years. Mariana Stepp was the previous organist before then, Lauren and Dorothy Tice. A great lineage of very good organists.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's in good hands with Ted, yeah.
Awesome. When exploring the pipework, the first thing that catches the eye is the copper-colored oxidation on the pedal octave bass. The action of this instrument is something to behold, as there are trackers just running everywhere. On the back wall is the brand new 16-foot pedal reed by the Buzard firm. It is quite lovely.